And today, this is, I guess the panelists are more excited than the audience, but that's going to change in a bit. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Eusebio Castro. I'm from the Dominican Republic, and we're gonna have a really special panel today. The title of the panel is Empowering Youth and Vulnerable Communities in Climate Decision-Making Processes Through Effective Capacity Building, Experiences from the Operation CAP program in Latin America and the Caribbean. As we know by now, this is the rights-based capacity building day here at the 5th Capacity Building Hub. So it's very important for us to understand and showcase the success stories of this program in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I'm going to give a quick introduction to our panelists today, and then they're going to present two great programs. The first one, Operation CUP, with Youth Ambassadors for Climate, that it's been going on for more than 5 years now, and it's touched hundreds of youth in Latin America and the Caribbean. And next, we're gonna see about the Youth Negotiators Academy that has also touched the lives of many youth across the world and also from Latin America and the Caribbean. So our first panelist, and if we can change the PPT as well, is Natalia Lever. Natalia Lever is the Executive Director for Latin America and the Caribbean at the Climate Reality Project, founded by former Vice President Al Gore. A graduate in International Relations from ITAM, Mexico, she also holds a diploma in Environmental Education for Sustainability from Universidad Iberoamericana and has studied social innovation at Austria's Global School for Social Leaders. Then we have Mary Claire Graff, which is a national and international climate policy consultant and advocate, co-founder of Youth Negotiators Academy, former focal point of the youth constituency at the United Nations Climate Change, and former vice chair of youth at the United Nations Food Systems Summit. She is known climate justice activist and public speaker for a just transition towards sustainable development and ambitious climate action. She was the youngest negotiator of Switzerland to any UN climate negotiations, and is currently training young diplomats from all over the world for multilateral processes. She has been studying at ETH and the University of Zurich Political and Environmental Sciences. Then myself, I'm Eusebio Castro, as I mentioned before. I'm the lead negotiator of Just Transition, Response Measures, and Human Rights for the government of the Dominican Republic, specifically the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources of the Dominican Republic. I'm a lawyer in international law and human rights law, and I try to defend human rights and introduce them into the regime of the UNFCCC. So it's a pleasure for me to be here. Then we have Maria Laura Martinez, and if we can change the PPT as well, as I mentioned in her bio. She is an industrial engineer with a master's in environmental management, specializing in climate change, and holds a master's in green economics. She has completed international courses in negotiation and leadership at Harvard Law School, selected as Youth Climate Ambassador for the Dominican Republic at COP27 and SB 58. She coordinates the National Youth Network for Climate and Youth Sustainable and Youth. With over 5 years of experiences in the environmental climate field, she currently works as a technology-based solutions consultant at Alcott, focusing on the development of carbon market and plastic credit projects in the Caribbean. Then we have Valeria Orton. Valeria Orton is the advisor for loss and damages for Mexico at COP28. She is a communicator and was Mexico's loss and damages lead negotiator at both COP27 and SB 58. Recognized as the Operation COP Mexico 2022 Climate Ambassador, she is also the visionary founder of Green Reconnection, an innovative platform focused on climate action, acknowledged as an environmental leader by the Jane Goodall Institute and a climate leader by the Climate Reality Project. Valeria has continued to prepare on climate change, environmental diplomacy, storytelling, and leadership. Currently, she is part of the marketing and communications team at the Social Progress Imperative, a nonprofit dedicated to advancing social progress in Latin America and the Caribbean. And finally, but not least, we have Antonio Diaz Aranda, which is a young man passionate about climate action and transformational changes. He served as Business Development and Operations Manager at Benchmark ESG, where he was responsible for the expansion of Mexico and Latin America of digital solutions in the area of EHS, ESG, supply chain, and environment. Additionally, he was selected as the lead Article 6 negotiator for Mexico at COP27 in Egypt and SB 58 in Germany, developing extensive experience on issues of cooperated approaches in carbon markets. Antonio is currently a specialist in carbon markets at South Pole, collaborating with international organizations and in the implementation of carbon instruments. I am very excited about this panel, and I hope that you are too. So, as we mentioned before, we have a director and a co-founder of two great programs that are focused on youth and that have developed rights-based approaches to capacitate, to empower youth throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. So I would like them to present a little bit about Operation COP and the Youth Negotiators Academy and how they use the methodology of rights-based capacity building.
Thank you so very much. I'm very proud to be sharing this panel with our alumni from Operation COP, and this year, this amazing alliance that we have with the CYMP that has really supported the program, and we see the results. So Operation COP was born in 2019 in the Madrid COP. That was my first COP. I was not very young at that moment. But what I could see is that, since 2018, there was a big movement started in Europe by Greta Thunberg. There was a lot of youth that started understanding their power in the climate arena, and they wanted to participate. They were there in Madrid, very excited, very passionate about, they wanted things to change. But as we all see here, it is complicated, it is complex, it is cruel, and you need a lot of experience to understand it and to be effective. So I don't know what phase my colleagues see in me, but one of my colleagues at Climate Reality just asked, Natalia, are you okay? And I think that I see that face every time I come to COP. People just are confused and maybe a little bit heartbroken to see that the climate negotiations are not as easy or as effective as they could be. So I said, I think I am a little bit heartbroken because this is not what I thought multilateralism was. I didn't think it was so cutthroat. I didn't think it was so complicated. I didn't think that I was really going to feel that I cannot have any incidents whatsoever. I would have to be inside the room. I would have to have many experience. I would have to be very well connected. And every negotiator that I talked to at that COP told me the same exact thing. Oh, don't worry, this is your first COP. You will start getting the hang of it by your third, fourth year that you're coming here. But at the same time, we could see the youth that wanted to have an incident right there, right then, because we don't have time. And that is how Operation COP came to be. We started working with Mexico, and then other 3 countries in the region supported the program, and the methodology is extensive. We do an open call in every country where we choose 35 youth. We ask them, for a video, something written, their CV. What we want to see is that they have their own vision of the future. They don't necessarily need to be experts in the field, but they need to be connected with their community and have a vision for the future. Those 35 young people undergo a training with their governments. So we do want the youth to know what is climate ambition and what is Climate Reality's vision for the future, but we think it's very important that they have the perspective from the government. Again, the government position here at COP is constructed throughout the years and throughout many years with negotiating inside the country with the interests of the private sector, with the interests of civil society, with the interests of different ministries in the government. So our interest is for these youth to start understanding climate change from that perspective of not only the policy, but the politics. And in those 3 months that they have this training with their governments, the other thing that is very important for us is that the youth start having work and trust relationships with government officials. Because there is also a very bad reputation about youth climate activism these days. You know, that is very strong, that is very forceful, that they just want to confront the government, and that is not true. And we can see it here. There is a lot of young activists who want to work in a different way with the people that are making the decisions, and they want to become themselves the decision makers. So on those 3 months, we want to create those relationships. Then after that, we have a second selection, and we choose the 3 best profiles from those 35 people. And from then, this year, we were able to work with the CYMP program that is fantastic, where they learned, you know, what is the UNFCCC, how does it work, what to expect when you're here. Well, I'll let Marie-Claire talk about that in a minute. We also partner with the Harvard Law, the Kennedy Harvard Law School of Harvard. They did an amazing program from these youth to understand what is a negotiation. It's not only about, you know, the technical aspect, but, you know, who are the people that are involved? How do we have these conversations? How do we have hard conversations and get to a middle ground to be able to really put forward the agendas that we want on climate ambition? And aside from the continue with the educational program, they have a mentorship program with their governments. So what we ask from our partner governments is that these youth have, these 3 people in each government have a work plan, and that they become part of the official delegation activities from there on to COP. With a specific track negotiation track, with the specific objectives, with the specific activities. And again, that work relationship gets stronger, you know, in those months until they get to COP. And even though we repeat this, you will be confused. You will understand very little in the first week or even in the 2 weeks. Maybe it will hurt to see how multilateralism really works, but what we want is that these youth have these hard experiences very young, very early in their professional careers, and decide if this is something that they want to do, so that the next year and the next year and the next year they come, they know better and better how to have incidents. So thank you for this opportunity, Eusebio. He is one of our alumni, and you know, all of you here, I'm very proud, I'm very pleased to see that the program is working. We have trained more than 1,000 people in Latin America. This COP, we brought 26 youth from 10 countries in the region, and we're grateful also with the governments for opening up these spaces and trusting the youth. They're not making the positions yet, but I know that they will be the decision makers in the future. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Well, now you got introduced to a new acronym, the CYMP, which is the Climate Youth Negotiator Program. And the name is literally what we're doing. We're training young climate negotiators from all around the world. But let me start with why we are doing this. And you already mentioned COP25 in Madrid. It was the COP when I was appointed by our president of Switzerland to be part of the climate negotiation. I was civil society. I was following the negotiations before. We always asked of having a seat at the table. But when I got this phone call, I rejected, because I was like, I mean, how on earth am I suddenly going to be negotiating? I don't really understand what it means. And so this was the moment when I realized I actually don't have enough, there's no capacity building to actually support me as a negotiator. I have been here and following the negotiations, but suddenly being on the other side of the table and defend the interest of my country while defending also the interest of young people was very difficult. And I didn't understand, you know, how to make an intervention, all of these rules and procedures. I mean, like, whatever, like, it's complicated, as you mentioned. But ultimately they convinced me, I accepted, and I was a negotiator, the first ever, the youngest ever, whatever, which was a fantastic experience and it was really great, but also I had my first mental health breakdown in the second week because there was a lot of pressure. It was really, really challenging to kind of come forward, to feel the representation of young people. I was the only young person in the delegation. Suddenly I have to kind of defend these interests, while my country was also new to this and they were not really sure how to handle me. They gave me a negotiating mandate, but they were like, okay, you cannot say this and this, but do whatever. So it was very challenging, and there I really thought we need to create a structure to support young people, that when we are coming here, we can actually effectively and meaningfully engage in the decision-making process. And so this was kind of the start for me to think about the academy. I became Younger Focal Point, as you mentioned, so working with young people in the observer space, so they are ones who are not taking decisions on the tables. And afterwards, upon completion of the mandate, we started the academy for ladies from all around the world who have been heavily engaged in the process, with the one aim to support young people in the climate negotiations and equip them, train them, give them the knowledge, the skills, the understanding, and all the resources needed to actually sit on these tables and negotiate and take the decisions for themselves, because it's actually our right. When we talk about right-based climate action, it's important to acknowledge that we are not only the ones, the beneficiaries, the observers, the advisors. We are also this, but we're also the key stakeholders in the decision-making ourselves. And unfortunately, we have to fight for getting this recognition. We have to fight for actually sitting on these tables, but we are like two different structures, and there are a couple of more out there who are really supporting young people to be part of decision-making processes. So we started last year. We had like 180 different consultations with all kind of different people to understand how can we best support this vision of intergenerational leadership and empowering young people. And at one point it became very clear there's a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, a lack of capacity to actually negotiate. There is a lack of a community. If you're suddenly in the negotiation space, you can feel really, really lonely. In some of the negotiation spaces, I was technology transfer, I was the only young person. So I had no one to actually talk to about some of the worries. There is also we have a network amongst the youth community, but not per se in the negotiations. There's a lack of financial resources. Many of the countries, specifically when we talk about the most vulnerable communities and countries, they don't have small delegations because they want, but because they have simply no financial means, and they essentially come on the UNFCCC funding here, and this funding will never go to a young person. If they get 2 people funded, they will give it to the minister and an advisor to the minister, but never ever there's going to be a young person funded in the delegation. So there's a huge issue around financial means. And the last issue was the mindset. Very often, as you also mentioned, when you see a young person, the room is like, oh, you cannot be a negotiator because you're young. And specifically for young females, also young females of color, it's just like basically already given that you cannot be a decision maker. And so we were like, okay, how can we address these 4 different challenges we see? So the Youth Negotiators Academy is basically built on these 4 pillars. We have a 6-month capacity building program, which you already mentioned. 6 months, 6 modules, focusing on understanding the UNFCCC, the framework, the procedures and processes, everything what you need to know to actually make sense of this mess over here, to be able to effectively and meaningfully engage. Then going through all the negotiating items, so we have an understanding of all of them, whereas we give in-depth support and training of the one you're actually going to follow. But we want you to understand everything, that you, in case you get dropped into another negotiation stream last minute, you actually are understanding what's going on, or at least you can kind of create these intersections between agriculture, gender adaptation, global stocktake, mitigation, finance, because this is what a good negotiator is about, that they can actually create these interlinkages and not kind of be boxed in their own negotiation stream. But then also it's not only about kind of, the knowledge you have, but also the skills. At least to me, when I was a negotiator, I had to do my first intervention, I didn't know when I had to put up my flag and how to take the microphone. So we give them also very comprehensive skills training capacity on making interventions, policy draft. The art of negotiation is also where we work together with the Harvard Kennedy School Negotiation and Conflict Resolution Collaboratory. I got it right. A very awfully long name. They actually wanted to be here today, but they had already to leave. And then also we have a very comprehensive leadership training, specifically also going into the direction of mental health support, resilience support, because these spaces can be incredibly draining. And the least we want is bringing young people here who have a burnout, who are suffering, who have like eco-anxiety. We have it all amongst us already, right? So we don't have to exacerbate these. So we also have, for example, a mental health and trauma expert with us who is here to support the negotiators, and we give a lot of self-care practices in advance. So this is 6 months training, and the last one is, this is online, and the last one is in person. We met for 3 days here in Dubai to do a negotiation simulation, to really run through everything on ground. But it's not only about what you know. It's great if you know all of this, but you're not going to be a great negotiator, because you also have to know the people in the room, you have to know the other young people. And what is really beautiful, because we work with 54 different member states together, that we actually create communities amongst these 54 member states. And of course, you have a lot of Latin American countries also through the collaboration, but we are global. We do this in every single UNFCCC region. There are 5 regions, and we have countries from all of these regions, and we build a very unique network, which is honestly really robust, because these negotiators, when we have to find consensus, it's so important to understand an issue, for example, on Article 6, from an African perspective, or from a least developed country perspective, or from a small island perspective, or from a Swiss perspective, where I come from. And we can only do this by actually creating these conscious communities. But also knowing other people who are relevant, the co-chairs and so on, from the UNFCCC, from other UN entities. And then what we do, we also raise the funds to actually bring these people here. So this year we have 125 of our negotiators here. Most of them are funded by us. So we raise the funds to bring them all here, because we don't want to then basically support them, capacitate them, and then last minute they're like, okay, now you can find your own funding, which is not fair. So we fund them from the beginning on, for all the countries who do not have insufficient financial means. And we do a lot of advocacy. We talk with the countries, with other partners, do events like this here, with the purpose of changing the mindset of people, that young people can actually sit in this room, make use of their rights to take the decisions ourselves. So that's what the program is doing, and as already mentioned, we work with 54 member states together. We aim to have even more countries next year, to really become like a global movement of intergenerational leadership, so that young people can be part of decision making and actually, really shake this space up and, do better negotiations.
Thank you, Natalia and Mary Claire, for those awesome remarks. Something that I really recall, or I wanted to bring to the table, is what you mentioned before, rights-based. And that makes me remember or recall the Paris Agreement that enables or recognizes the right to health, the right to development, right to healthy, sustainable, and clean environment, and also the rights of children, and youth is included in that. So it's something that it's really important that we should strive for. Now that we have a general understanding of how these amazing programs work in a global and in Latin American region, we are going to pass to the alumni from Operation Cup, and I want you to tell us very briefly, how did this program impact you, and also how did this right-based approach allowed you to not only have effective participation in negotiations, but also allowed you to be here again for the second year in a row? You have the floor. And we can start with you, Maria Laura.
Okay, thank you, Eusebio, for the opportunity and also for the question. In my case, I will start from the beginning. I was doing my master thesis, and it was in a landfill to understand how the greenhouse emissions from methane are going to the atmosphere. So I see in the front line how climate change works, in the landfill. That's why I understand that I can just do it for a research for my university. I have to do something. That's why I see the Climate Reality Project proposals, and I start my journey there. And I get capacity building with other experts of my country and regional experts, and understand how the negotiation works, how I can use my voice to change everything. And I get involved. I was selected to go to COP27, and I follow climate transparency and Article 6 negotiations. And in this COP, I was in a side event in the Dominican Republic Pavilion, and I present my master thesis. The thing is that they offered me a job there. And I'm started in Alcott. Alcott is an international company that developed projects related to Article 6, carbon markets, and plastic credits in the Caribbean, in my case. So I'm representing this company here in this COP, and also I'm supporting the Dominican Republic government in the climate tech technologies negotiations. And yeah, that's my story.
Hi everyone. Is this on? Yeah, I think so. Sorry. I am Valeria. Thank you so much, Eusebio, for the question. I studied communication. I've always been passionate about climate change. And I love this phrase by David Attenborough that says that the climate crisis is a communication challenge. So what I try to do every day in my work is to find that interconnection between climate change and communication, and how can we accelerate everything. So then translating that into the negotiations, I had the opportunity to be part of the Mexican delegation at COP27 as part of Operation COP as lead negotiator of the loss and damage. So I had two different experiences, one for the operationalization of the Santiago Network and the other one for the Loss and Damage Fund, which were two completely different conversations. So on the first one, it was what we normally do and be part of, and I had the great opportunity to incorporate text in the decisions, which was for me one of my most amazing and successful stories in that sense, specifically because of the text that we as a delegation incorporated, which was specifically for human rights. Sometimes in these spaces we take for granted that everyone is going to accept certain things that we now think that are common, but honestly, we still face with some people, some parties, and organizations who really say straight to you, like, no, we don't want human rights in these decisions. And that was really shocking for me, and I tried to do my best to change that. And the other experience was the Loss and Damage Fund, which, as you may know, that was a really difficult conversation last year. It turned out to be part of like a high-level conversation with the ministries and all of that, and I was there supporting my head of delegation. So that experience motivated me to not only think about COP as a space where we can have influence in 2 weeks and then go back home and that's it, and maybe next year you can be here again. What I wanted to do is continue during that whole year to see how can I bring this knowledge to my country, to the other youth that want to be here, that maybe they have even better ideas than I have, but that haven't had the opportunity to be here. So together with my colleague Antonio and Beatriz, who is in the audience also, we went to the SB58. We told the delegation if they could invite us again to continue this training and to be part of the conversation, because as you know, the tracks continue happening, like the conversations throughout the year. It's not only at COP. So we were part of that. Unfortunately, we were able to be here again, but as advisors of the new generation of Operation COP. So now our delegation has nine young people as delegates, as lead negotiators or advisors. And I think that is really helpful because, as Natalia said, it's really challenging to be at your first COP. And if you have the support of someone else, specifically youth, that was in your track, the previous conversations or last year, everything changes and it's better, or you can empower more and bring more change in the conversation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Antonio Diaz, and I'm also part of the youth delegation from Mexico. And I will go a little bit behind of my story to share with you. So I come from a small state in Mexico. I don't come from Mexico City. So I basically grew up in a state called Aguascalientes, which I know nobody knows here. But it is very small compared, to the big cities. And I didn't have any opportunity to learn about climate change because nobody talks about it where I come from. And that's the reality of a lot of our countries. Like in the small states, you never hear about it. But I was very intrigued about, what was was happening in my surroundings, because people start talking about it. We don't have water anymore, the temperatures are rising, but nobody could call it what it was. So when I first applied to the program, I think I was like, no, I got this imposter syndrome of I'm not good enough to be part of a program like this because I don't have the formal education of it. I don't come from this, city where everyone knows each other and where the climate movement is very active. I come from somewhere where there is no climate movement because nobody talks about it. So then I feel that was the first stage in which I started getting the training about, the different aspects of it and how it could influence it. Also, I'm an engineer. I'm an industrial engineer by career. So we never heard about it as engineers sometimes. So that was a very challenging. And then on the second round, when I had to do the video and the essay, I was like, what am I gonna, what can I say to explain that I'm good enough to be there? So then I had the fortune to be selected, and I still live with imposter syndrome that I still have a lot to learn. So then when they told me, oh, you're going to Egypt with the Mexican delegation and you're gonna drive a topic, I was like, what am I doing here? And how do I end up here? So I think, people tend to think that the most challenging process is the beginning, but I feel once you come here, you realize that this is a big challenge and there is so much to learn. And as youth, I'm following Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, and you go to the room and you see almost no youth to these technical aspects. I feel if you don't see youth, in general, in the technical aspects as technology and Article 6, you see way less. By instance, in my topic, there's people that have been since Kyoto Protocol and the CDM. So I was like, literally, what am I doing here? So I think it was a great but very fast learning process of learning everything that I had to on my way and on my own. Because also the great challenge within our countries is that the information is not received in our language. So you have to learn in another language and learn everything by heart and understand the technical concepts. And you have no support because nobody knows also about these technical aspects. And that's the reality of all the global south. So I realized that there was so much more to do. So then coming here, it was so fast. I feel those were 2 weeks that were very intense. And thanks to these 2 women for making these programs and enabling us to be here today, because we definitely need it. We need this youth capacity building. Something you realize is that we always talk about capacity buildings in the decisions within the UNFCCC, but nobody talks about the youth capacity building, the youth education. So nobody's teaching us about what is happening. So we want to achieve a just and equitable transition, but no one is teaching the next generation about it. So how are we planning to achieve it? And then afterwards, I think it was, for me, amazing how my life literally changed, because after that I had the opportunity to change my job. So I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I really want to dedicate myself to it. So I was hired as a climate consultant, so now I can live from these topics. And then I was, selected as being part of the Youth Climate Action Network from UNESCO. I was invited to be the representative from Mexico at the 13th Youth Forum, and even moderated. I had the opportunity to moderate an inter-ministerial session with 30 ministers from around the world about climate, about youth, the ministers from youth. So I think my life just changed after the program. And that's something you realize, that there is so much more that happens after the program that is very enrichful to our experience as youth. And I always say, this experience is not about what happens within these 4 buildings, because as youth, we tend to believe that everything has to be in the decision, that we all want our text to be in the decision or that word. But I think something that is very valuable from this program is what we take back to our countries, because we are building the skills, the knowledge, and the capacities of the next generation. And we are able to bring this knowledge also in our own language to our communities, to our states. So we start creating this movement that we don't have. And I think that is something that goes beyond what is happening here. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I think there is so much more we can do, and we need to build this capacity, because youth is underrepresented in so many forums, and we don't have the opportunity to speak out, to have that voice at the decision-making table. And it's very important, because all the decisions that happen here are affecting our future, also the one of the generations to come, and we still don't have a very active representation. And when I say representation, it's not just have one youth delegate, and it's not just have one youth at the decision-making table, because sometimes they tend to think that if you have one, you already covered the quota and you don't need any more. And no, we need to have a significant representation of youth, and that we are able to build that future that we all want and we all need, and creating that reality that we desperately want, because we deserve to have that future and we are fighting for it. And I think this program is the great example that when you build the capacities of youth, you can change a country, because on the future we will be the decision-making people, or we will be in the private sector or NGOs, and we will have a different perspective, more skills, more knowledge that are going to make the decisions better for the next generation. So I think we need to support these programs more and create and enable these programs to go further of what they're currently doing, which is amazing, but there's so much more to do, and empower youth. We need youth empowerment to create that reality that we all want. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your success story. I think it's very inspiring to every one of us. I've heard it before, and I'm inspired as well. So I will be ready and energized to go back to negotiations. So there's a lot of things that I recall or I want to rescue from this intervention, your three interventions, and also yours, Natalia, Mary Claire. And it's the importance of understanding the right to health, or having it as a base, or well, all human rights as a base to capacity building, which enables not only to create community, but also empowering the other youth through example, which is what we have here. I also want to recall a phrase that has been said a lot during negotiations. I'm in the Just Transition Work Program negotiations, and it has been brought by NGOs, especially trade unions, and it's nothing about us without us. And right now, as you three mentioned before, youth needs to empower or own this phrase. Nothing should be said about us without us in the table. And I think that all the four of us is a representation of intergenerational equity, and intergenerational equity can be manifested in multiple ways. One is public participation, and another one is also capacity building. So I want to ask Natalia, Mary Claire, very briefly, in less than a minute, because I know that we are we are short with the time. I want you to explain why choose the rights-based approach and not other methodology. What inspired you to take it as a base and transform the lives of other young people through rights-based capacity building?
Well, I'm gonna go hippie, all hippie here. I think in my experience, the reason why it hurt so much at that first COP is because we sometimes forget why are we doing this. Okay, so if the negotiation doesn't go our way, then everything is lost. But then when you talk to indigenous communities, to local communities, and they just like that say, if you want to kill me for this, you can kill me for it. But with that, just this is my life, this is my world, and this is who I am. And we don't have that in the cities, and we don't have that unless we were brought up like that. We did in 2020 a training in climate reality, and we had the honor to share with indigenous communities, and I think that dignity, that right from within, that's what we want as climate reality to bring to these negotiations. And youth have not lost that dignity still. And sometimes as adults, we can get to that point. So we want to rescue that feeling of belonging, of being important, and to have dignity and respect, and we deserve to be happy. So yeah, that's why we decided to work with youth, and we are alive and we're deserving, and hopefully youth can bring that to Latin America and the rest of the world.
Thank you so much. To complement what you have been saying, it's important to understand that right is a very powerful tool, specifically when we talk about the vulnerable communities, the excluded communities, the voices which are not listened to. They have a voice, but we are not choosing to not listen to them. And the rights-based approach is very powerful because it brings it back to the heart. There have been numerous decisions being taken, for example, on the right of young people to participate in decisions which impact their future. For example, climate negotiations, right? But if you're not actually utilizing them, these decisions are just there, right? There are plenty of decisions in the UNFCCC which actually enables us to get capacity building, to get the seat at the tables, but parties are deciding to not follow up on them. Many UN entities deciding are also not follow up. I mean, now this is starting. I'm very grateful also we have UNESCO and some people from UNICEF here. So it's really great to see kind of the momentum going, and also that this is an official UNFCCC pavilion. So we see a momentum coming. But I think it's really up on us to make use of our own rights and demand that these rights are implemented, because otherwise, like, why do we even have these rights? Why do we actually spend, why are we coming here to take decisions if we are afterwards not following up on them and demand them? And I think it's up on us to demand. It's up on us to not wait for the others, but just go and do it as we have all been doing, and many of you in the audience have been doing, and we have to continue this. But I think one very important element, we have to make it in the collaboration. We have to work together to build a very strong ecosystem, because ultimately we are still the one in the minority. We are still the ones excluded, or kind of being like, when there's a huddle, the ones who will take the second row of the huddles, who maybe not get a seat at the table when the rooms are like already full. So we have to work together, and that's why I'm so excited also that we have been working together this year, and we're looking forward to work with many more of all of you, also in the audience together, that we are making use of the rights, and then we are building a very strong ecosystem and collaboration, so that we are going to be even more powerful to really be effective and meaningfully engaged in this decision-making process.
Thank you so much, Natalia and Mary Claire. I think those were really powerful words. And something that really resonated with me is what you both mentioned about feeling that we deserve the right, acting upon it, not just recognizing that it exists, but actually acting upon it. So based on that, I wanted to ask the alumni here if they can give a sentence in less than 30 seconds. As I mentioned before, and sorry to putting you on the spot, but as I mentioned before, Tungo always mentions nothing about us without us. What is one phrase that you would say that connects those capacity building, rights-based capacity building with youth representation? And go ahead.
Okay, my phrase will be get involved and create your own network. Yes. Less than 30 seconds.
Well, that was super short. I should say, don't try to get together, build community. Don't be afraid to speak up. Not only with other youth, but also with people in decision making, and demand your rights, what we deserve, so that we together can build the future that we need, but that we deserve. Yeah.
My phrase will be that you're not alone, that there's a huge community that is supporting you at these rough times. And that we need to make sure the youth voices are here, considered and respected in the decision-making tables, and that we need climate action, everything, everywhere, all at once. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for this amazing panel. I think that I have a ton of questions, but I already have your context. But the audience doesn't. So let's hear from them if they have any questions, any comments that they would like to make. I believe that our panelists are really eager to answer all of them.
Hello. Thank you very much for for this interesting session, and congratulations to all of you in achieving really important work done so far. I apologize to the audience also. I will be a bit greedy, so I will have two questions. Question number one is more related to your experience as young negotiators, and especially when you interact with other delegations, seniors. On a personal level, do you feel that you are valued as a negotiator, or do you feel that you are labeled as a young negotiator, and are you treated differently than the other negotiators that are more senior than you? That's question number one. Question number two is more related to your responsibility regarding other young people in your countries. Apart from being engaged in the decision-making process, what are you doing in order to inform your communities, in order to build the capacity of your community, especially the young people of your communities? And do you have this agenda where whatever is happening here should be communicated within your ecosystem and within your community of young people? I will stop here. I have more questions, but I prefer to leave it to the audience.
Well, I think I can start. So I feel it is true. It definitely takes time for countries to respect you as youth, because the age gap, it definitely plays sometimes a game for some of the negotiators. So I feel it definitely needs to be a work. I feel more and more, and the more they see youth, they start getting used to seeing us and to respect our opinions. And I think once you said, you're representing a country and you say no to something, that's when they start to hear that, okay, why not? So I feel it's also part of believing in what we're doing, because sometimes you see youth negotiators be not that confident, and I feel that's the point in which if you're not confident enough, then the other negotiators are not going to trust you, because this space is very rough. So I feel it's a lot about their own confidence in order for people to be confident about your ideas and perspectives. And from so I'm very eager to education. So what I've tried to do is try to bring all this knowledge first in Spanish in Mexico, and then working with local schools and universities to try to disseminate the information so more youth can be in these spaces and even know that these spaces exist. Because when I first started telling people like, yeah, I'm going to COP, they were like, but what is that? So I feel there's a lot of knowledge that I'm trying to bring back home. And yeah, for me, education is the basis, and from that you can build on the rest. And not only on academia, but also even the government, because in the local governments, they don't even know what is happening here. They don't even know that the country has an NDC even. So there's a lot of capacity building that I'm trying to do back home with my local community.
I will be very quick. In my case, in the case of Eusebio, we are part of Dominican Republic delegation, and I think it's the youngest of the whole convention. So I feel very support, like for all my colleagues, all my mentor in the delegation that very support me when I go to the tables, and we talk about what happened. Like they explain me everything very easy to understand. And to respond to your second question, in the local and national level, I'm part of Juventud Sostenible, that is a national network for youth, and we implement public consultations. So we know how Dominican youth feel about climate change, especially children's, and in remote areas. So it's a complete process, international, but also national framework.
Maybe just to add, when I was a negotiator at COP25, they told me, under no circumstance mention your age. I was 22. And I mean, this already gives you the pressure, oh, I may be wrong here, right? At COP26, Panama had the youngest ever delegation with a foreign minister who I think was 28 or something, and they made a statement on the opening and the closing. They're proud of it. And I mean, this is so beautiful to see. We also had the youngest ever vice chair for the SBI. He's from Panama, Juan. Now the youngest ever sub-staff chair from Natalie from Dominican Republic. I mean, it's coming, right? And they are literally saying, I'm proud of being the youngest ever. and I want to have more young people here, and I think it's so beautiful to see this movement. And I think what you said, we have to be confident, we have to own it, that we are young, but also say like we do it in an intergenerational way. We want to lead with everyone here, that it's not kind of becoming exclusive, because otherwise, like, you know, the others feel like very threatened, and they're like, oh my God, these young people want to kick us out. That's not the point, but we want to do it with you together. So I think it's important to own it, to mention it, to be proud of it, but say we want to do it with you together in an intergenerational way.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, thank you. So my name is Mohammed Walid Jumni. I'm from Tunisia, and I'm also a young negotiator for Tunisia on climate finance and also loss and damage. I'm also part of UK network with UNESCO. So my questions is addressed to you all. The question is how we can sustain this kind of young programs since usually the mandate of such programs are 1-2 years. So, for example, the governments like choose one young delegate and they gave them, for example, mentorship or technical, let's say, support. So they go to the event, and after that, the experience is over. And to be honest, I'm noticing even in the negotiation rooms, the number of youth, like, for example, when, if I saw any negotiators last year, I'm not seeing them this year. It's super hard to make their integration after that, after having their first, let's say, participation into the diplomatic, let's say, delegation. It's quite difficult. So how we can ensure that this kind of programs are not just like for 1 or 2 years, but we can work and have them, let's say, keep going and keep participating and keep delivering the voice of youth.
So that is a very important question. And so, okay. So what we try to do in Operation Cup, for example, that is why we work so closely with the governments, because they need to see the value of working with youth. And, you know, we see at least 4 people that, you know, have shown them that working together is good for their position here, representing their communities at home. So first of all, I think it's important for these movements of youth and negotiations to understand also the needs of the governments. Why don't we have better and bigger delegations? Why don't we, in the case of Latin America, have, you know, more capacities to face the global north in these negotiations? So from our perspective, we have been, it's been very important to us to understand the side of the governments and also make it official. Right now, 2 of our delegates here from Chile put forth a declaration to officialize the presence of youth in the delegations at the UNFCCC. And hopefully these will be replicated in other conventions, because this is not the only agenda that youth needs to be represented in. It is a lot. So we want to train expert negotiators so they can talk about climate change and biodiversity and desertification and all the other agendas that are going to be important for their futures. But I think it is collaboration spirit to understand, you know, the different stakeholders. So a lot of times, you know, we see the governments as, you know, the bad guys, and sometimes that can be the case. But we need to work together, and we need to understand how, as youth, you are going to be part of the governments one day, and how do we really change the system. Yeah.
Just want to add something very quickly. I think as youth, you need to make yourself irreplaceable at that table. So how your knowledge can be applicable for the different stakeholders is very important. So not only, you know, is what is discussed here, but a lot of people want to know what is getting discussed here. So as youth, you have to use the power of knowledge that you have now and, you know, use it with the different stakeholders to make yourself needed at that table. I think that's something that sometimes as youth we don't understand, that we need to make applicable the knowledge that we have, and that this is information that everyone wants to know. And a lot of people don't have access to those tables. So you have a power. So the question is if you want to use it or not.
Thank you so much for those answers. Unfortunately, we need to wrap up, but as we negotiators says, we can huddle up outside and answer all the questions that the audience can present right now. We are very grateful for the UNFCCC to provide this space, and we're really grateful for you as well to be here, hear our experiences, and understand that we need to empower youth, especially youth in vulnerable communities, to be part of the decision-making process. And to do this, we can do it through our rights-based approach, which is everything and all about this day here at the 5th Capacity Building. Thank you so much. See you outside.